When I start something, I want to be the winner. I like to compete and win. I don't like losing. I think I really like to win. Fundamentally, like every single thing in life, I would be like, how am I going to actually engage and compete when people have already done so much? Is change the game, change the rules, throw the dice again, shuffle the cards around, and now we can play. I always admire people who win not the same way that everyone else wins.
Founding a company is one of the most daunting and lonely paths a person can choose. If you get it wrong, you can lose everything you have. But if you get it right, you could change the world. It's a relentless roller coaster of emotion that changes every day. And to take that leap requires a very rare mix of naivety and courage.
Imagine a network that is always around you, always on, and you can talk to anyone, anywhere around the world at any point in time.
We're more informed than ever before. We've got more at our fingertips, more to consume.
It's like the fabric of society connected together.
The team at finder.com.au say it's their goal to simply make sure you find what you're looking for.
We're a comparison service. Our goal and our belief is to better all the world's decisions.
Credit cards, mortgages, insurances, VPNs, space flight. There are 7 different ways to go to space, by the way. I don't know if you're going to come back. Hey, that's extra.
Now, you were just telling me the company is 10 years old. You started with no funding.
This is where we do our work.
I guess I'm a bit of a hustler.
We're just hustling out here.
So Fred, congratulations on winning the Entrepreneur of the Year. We've got this common vision of how the world could be different.
We've got a whole second world, essentially. It's like an endless shelf of creation.
We're trying to be the next tech unicorn of Australia.
Birds want to fly. Sharks already know how to swim. I'm a creator. I want to create something great. Creativity is massive for me. Creating things to me doesn't have to be like just design. It could be like coding something or, building something. You don't have to physically actually do the coding or do the designing. You could be part of it, but bringing it all together to make this creation come to life. That's creativity to me. Unfortunately, creativity is not a straight line. Like a lot of time in creativity, a lot of creatives are sitting there doing nothing. And people are like, what is this creative person doing nothing for? It's like, no, that's the moment in time when you're creating. You're taking in the energy, you're reading the room, you're reading the universe, you're taking it all in and you're processing and digesting that. You get tired, you come home and you're like, I spent all my energy, what did you do today? I was thinking. Like, okay. When there is a creative problem that needs to be solved in a creative way and you're not creative and you solve it in a linear way, it fails. I've seen businesses, they fall off and they die.
When I started in technology, it was often seen as something that was going to be outsourced to India. That programming jobs weren't really a good long-term career because they would quickly be replaced by someone in, somewhere else around the world. And I think that has changed so significantly that every company is either becoming a technology company or they're being disrupted by a technology company.
So Frank and I had an online marketing company in the 2000s called Freestyle Media, and we were making websites for some pretty big clients.
This was a little bit before its time as well, because up until that point, most companies didn't even know what a website was.
I was always on Frank's case about new ideas. He's like, Fred, we've got to do client work. And I was like, And then I realized during Christmas, clients didn't want very much work. They went on holidays. I was like, whoa, what are we gonna do with these people? Then I realized this is an opportunity. Let's go and build our own sites.
Fred to me has always been a great spark. He's got that disruption mindset. He's always got some X factor. There's always something that no one else will ever think about to make things pop.
So we sat down in a room together and we came up with like 40 ideas. And we put them all up on the internet. And I was like, yes, we are doing this. The Mother's Day present site didn't work because it wasn't Mother's Day. Sudoku, I don't know how you make money out of that. Poker was big back then. And so that did all right.
Mind you, many of them bombed. Christmasday.com.au, we had Mother's Day gifts, Perfumes Online.
But the credit cards one, every single bit of effort that we put in, it grew the business. One thing grew. It was just amazing.
It just started to take off. We were solving a real problem. People just didn't know which credit card to choose, to the point where all those other ideas just became just irrelevant.
Before the internet, to choose your credit card, you'd have to go and talk to 10 or 15 different banks, look at their paper brochures, call them on the telephone. And what Finder allowed people to do for the very first time was kind of bring all this information together.
That was like the beginning. And with any idea, you know, it can look like, oh, it's okay. But because we've done all with the work, we've seen so many sites we've built, we looked at them and we're like, that's a real business. That's a real thing. When I grew up, I had no idea. I was just, you know, I wanted to do something big. I don't know what that means. I was not the most academically smart. I didn't top the year in class. Pretty much everything I've done, it's just a wandering, meandering, serendipitous turn up at something and like, oh, what is this thing here? You know, and then we sort of go down these rabbit holes. My father, he loves gadgets. He would buy gadgets and I would tear them apart. He bought a computer and a color monitor, like in the 80s, and had a modem. Like back then it was like, wow, and it would connect to the internet. I unpacked the games and I would delve into the code of the game and have a look at it and go, oh, that's interesting. And I would mess around with it and make it do other things it's not supposed to do. And I was given that freedom to explore, and that was okay. I started doing actuarial studies and computer science because I didn't know what university meant or anything like that. I was just rolling in. I saw a website and I fiddled around with it, saved it, reloaded, and I realized it changed. I was like, oh, I can actually read some of this. And I go home and I was like, just dedicated, like when I was a kid. I was like vacuumed into the internet. The first site I built, I sent to my friend, had a picture of him, and I wrote him a message, and he was like, whoa, you just built the internet? You know, like, is that even possible? I was like, yeah, it's possible. I just worked it out. There was a night before an exam for actuarial studies, and I hadn't studied for the exam. I brought my book over to his house, I brought my computer, we built this first dynamic website, and it was like, wow, look at this thing. And he said, what about your exam? And I said, yeah, I don't think I want to do that anymore. I woke up in the morning, I drove to the uni and I filled in my attendance and I just left. I was willing to put it all on the line. And I had no idea where I was going either. I was just going into the void of, I'll figure it out, like I always have.
Credit Card Finder was, in its early years, bumpy. You know, we didn't have a lot of money, and Fred and I were sort of living off, I think one year we drew $6,000 in the year.
Yes. Yeah, we didn't have much, but what we did have is a lot of ideas and a lot of, you know, ambition to do something great.
just the sheer amount of effort to survive. Working 7 days, sleeping 3 or 4 hours a night was kind of normal for years.
We used to wear our shoes so there were holes still through them. And because we didn't have enough money, but we would just keep wearing them because the top of them looked okay. Any little opportunity we got, we maximized as best we could.
Well, this was the only meal that Frank and I knew how to cook. This is the only meal I know because this is the only thing that we survived on in the beginning when we were starting the company. That's the only reason I know how to cook this. Give me some feedback on that, Portia.
Yeah, it deserves a 9.56 out of 10.
Back in the day, no one knew who Finder was, and so the way that we originated our traffic was via Google. Google at the time wasn't the most sophisticated engine that you see today. There were ways to, frankly, manipulate the algorithm.
And just because, I don't know, it was something to do, I was like, how good am I at SEO? How actually good am I? Am I world class? Am I average? Am I able to compete and win? And I just went down this rabbit hole. I just kept on pursuing this idea of figuring out Google. And I went further and further down this rabbit hole. And everything I did made a little bit of a difference. And then one day I popped up on the first page and I was like, yo, here we go. I just sought this thing out.
Back then, the rules were very vague. No one set the rules for the internet. These are rules that are not only kind of legal framework rules, but pushing the limits and the rules of the technology. Everyone was building the aeroplane as they were flying it.
I used to call up, the student unions. I said, hey man, how's it going? Yeah, I just want to buy an ad on your website. I just want you to write the word credit card. That's it, just in text. He's like, where would you like it? I'll just do anywhere. On the front page, it's great. I'll pay you $5,000 right now. Give me your bank account. Literally, I transferred the money, link goes live. Next few days, bang, #1 in Google. And I was like, that is where it's at.
It wasn't just us, of course. It was like the dark art of SEO, where you used to go and buy links from authority websites and point them back to your website, and you used to get rankings off the back of that.
I remember I was in the north of England. It was cold, and I got this call on my phone at 3 o'clock in the morning. I was like, oh, that's kind of unusual. I walked out to our car. It was Jeremy saying, man, I think we got penalized by Google.
We received this penalty, which was pretty much webmaster level. It meant that everything we did on the internet, Google wouldn't allow it to get traffic, which is pretty wild.
Of course, it was a significant impact on the business. Virtually went all our revenue overnight from the organic side of things went down to virtually nil.
I found the angle, but I broke the rules and went down to page 20. I saw the top of the mountain and I stood on it for a second and then I got smacked down.
The default outcome for a startup is failure. The fact that any startups succeed should be totally surprising to everyone because they're trying to bring change in the world. And if it was really easy to have brought about that change, someone would have already done it and we'd already be there.
I think entrepreneurship is actually defined as taking financial risk to potentially get financial gain. Potentially. They haven't seen all the graveyard of mistakes when you've put the money up and you're sailing out to sea and just the responsibility comes back to you.
There was a time there where we thought, oh, this could be the end of the company. It was that dire back then. Went back to basics. We started to become more white hat. We had to go back and say to all those websites, please don't link to us. And then we went back to Google and said, look, we don't have any of these links anymore. Please consider our website on its own merits. We worked night and day to get our rankings back. And it didn't matter what job you were doing at the time, by the way. If you could help in some way, you were asked to do it.
It was really hard. I remember getting to the final day of just going, I'm giving up. But I told myself, it's not possible. I've done everything it takes. Went to sleep at 7 a.m. in the morning, woke up at 2 p.m., and I just rolled over, looked at my emails, and I saw an email from Google saying that our website was unpenalized. It was back on again. I remember just calling Fred and Frank and just swearing and crying for about 20 minutes straight. Like, we're back, baby, we're back.
I think those are the moments that formed Finder. That ability to deal with a crisis. Because not everything's going to go well all the time. And in fact, it went terribly. I realize as well, like, pushing the limits can actually potentially, kill the whole thing. And I always think back to that time of, I pushed it too far. When you go and do something, you want to get up there and stay there. And that means you probably have to go and do a lot more creativity to compliantly get to the top. That was the moment in time when we stopped touching the wires and build a real business.
So much harsh reality around here.
All right. I see like the whole world is like a game. There's like a computer game that's going on, and like Finder's just a real life computer game with real money. Gaming, for some reason, is a gateway into the digital world that gives you the dynamics.
Oh, just the beautiful snap in. It's like the snap of a Chanel makeup case. It's like, that's what putting RAM in computers is like.
I see them as a simulation of the world. I see them as a simulation of what's gonna happen, and then you play that out. It's like a scenario you play out. From that simulation, I then can understand what to do today.
My ex-wife, I bought one of these machines and I brought it home. She's like, why'd you buy all these pieces? Oh, I love these little double connectors. It's like choop, choop. It's like genius cabling.
I know how the assembly code works. I know how the processor, I know how it interprets that, and the AND and OR gates, and the HTML and the JavaScript and everything that leads to it. I need to understand the full stack in order to create something great. To know, with this outrageous idea, can the base handle it?
Looks pretty good. That's a serious video card. That's like, that's a tidy piece of machinery.
Then I know how to take the universe and get it to do something it's never done before.
Sick.
I think the stereotype of a founder once upon a time is very different to the reality that there is today. Founders these days can be, first time out of college, but they can equally be someone that has worked at large companies for most of their career and forged out on their own in a passionate way. They can be people from backgrounds of privilege, or they can be people that have worked their way up from the toughest of circumstances in order to build something great.
I got a proposal for you.
Go on then.
How would you feel about building your interface as a mini app into the Finder app?
That sounds pretty cool.
So what we're looking for is some launch partners.
Okay.
We would build the APIs for what you need.
Yep.
And then you'd basically be first to market.
Holy shit, so you're talking about moving into like almost being an open banking aggregator in your own way then?
Yep.
That's huge.
So startups are all about disruption. They're about doing something new. They're about breaking the rules of the status quo. Fred is just this classic founder who brings that individuality and that confidence to go and break rules. Fred in a suit and tie just doesn't feel right.
So can I just tell you the goal with this?
Yeah.
Is to reduce all the CapEx.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you get to market faster.
Yeah.
It's interesting because you think, okay, well, is someone like this going to be an amazing entrepreneur or not? But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what sort of character you are. If you've got an amazing vision and you can execute, people want to follow a leader, and he's a leader.
Sounds amazing. Sign us up. Like, we'd absolutely love to get involved.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Yeah, this will be sick. This is gonna be key. I guess in my upbringing, it was very traditional, very like conformist, and I was always bouncing out like right against the wall, trying to like break out. It was kind of frowned upon, or like I guess maybe I saw it as like I shouldn't be like that. And it took me a long time to just break out and just go, look, I'm not going to go and do that. I'm going to go and do it my way.
Geez, my hair was pretty long.
It was really long.
I think it's pretty good.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing.
Excellent.
All right, game back on. What's next?
We're about to meet with Fred, who's got this 50-kilometre challenge. Fred, what was your technique on day one?
Get to the 10th lap.
Okay.
He is so stubborn. When he sets himself a goal, he is going to achieve it. His level of persistence, almost to a level of ridiculousness, is pretty up there.
I can't keep up with Fred. I don't think anyone can keep up with Fred, literally. He uses a burnout as a way of achieving something.
How's the body feeling now, Fred?
I think he likes to challenge himself mentally and physically to a point where he can't go any further. He believes that that is his process of his success.
How are you feeling?
Well, I was thinking about it, and Greta advised me to step in the footsteps of other people, and I realized that I prefer to step in the steps where no one's been, because sometimes I think beaten paths are for beaten men.
This is a new product, and I'm basically looking at how much money people have put into it. So it's just gone over 3.57 million. And that's like, this is a lot of money. We're paying people 4% on their money. It's a pretty big bet. Yeah, I'm thinking about like how to make it grow more faster, always.
What Finder looks like today and what it's done in the past, like it's obviously there to save people money by comparing services, and that's what we started doing. And now what we're starting to also do is help people invest their money. Why do you save money? Because you want to invest it, hopefully, and then from those investments you build your wealth. Then what do you do with that? Then you go and live your life. At the end of the day, I think about the single mum with 2 kids who's trying to earn a bit of extra money and, buy that bike for her son. How do you deal with that? I need to save money, and I'm not going to go and spend all the time and research all the deals and stuff. I just want to get it done, and I could just go to Finder and, we've already done the work for you. It's done. It's insane. Like watching your money grow is pretty addictive.
Finder has an enormous potential to help people live a better life. That's fundamentally it. If you think about all the people in the world and their ability to get access to the right information to make those decisions, it's somewhat limited in many parts of the world. And when I think about the emerging world, that really speaks to me as well, because I know that in those markets, they don't have necessarily all the access to the tools and information that they should.
Now we're running 2 businesses inside the one. It's like a double.
Wow, this is so cool. Who's this rainbow dude?
I work a lot. And I kind of integrate that in. I think the rest, it fills up with family. That's it. I think one day it'll be even more. I just, there's a certain sacrifice you make to create something great, create something, put all your energy into, and then realistically it takes away from your family. Yeah, in some small way, I guess. Hopefully they'll forgive me.
Well, it makes him glue his eyes to his phone. I'm like, Daddy, are you gonna unpack the dishwasher today? Mm-hmm. No joke. 2 hours later. Daddy. Mm-hmm. Just let me do my work, please. And I'm like, okay.
So startups are this long, grinding journey, and founders are often making these short-term sacrifices with their eye on the long-term goal.
I think that's why we don't even put...
And that's really tough for your family. It's really a journey that the family goes on together.
Thank you, you are done.
Founders are the sort of people who are prepared to make sacrifices that others wouldn't. It's about finding this balance. Like, how do you push to the limits but still keep a relationship with your family?
Because we're offering a free credit score to do a KYC in the UK.
Uh-huh.
And that just got processed.
Oh. Is it like the fluffy one? What's a KYC?
KYC is know your customer.
There are always downsides from putting everything into and being an entrepreneur and running a business. That's the truth. But that's the choice you make, right? You make your choices in life and you move forward. This idea of balance is difficult when you've got a responsibility as an executive or a director of a company. The mindset and the effort required to always be thinking forwards requires a lot of time and effort.
Yeah, that takes sometimes personal sacrifice. Personal sacrifice to get there, and it's not easy always, but yeah, like you can just achieve so much not only for yourselves but for others by having that level of commitment. And yeah.
Who's first?
I bet it's me.
I don't think probably create a traditional environment.
That was like perfect.
I think to a large degree I give them a lot of independence. I let them play computer games. I encourage them to play computer games. Here's a Minecraft, look at this game. They're like, oh, this is what I see it on YouTube. And they just went so far into it.
Help me.
And they play with their friends and they cooperate and they're learning little codes and how to use it. And I'm like, good.
We're gonna go left, we're going that way, you guys go that way.
No, that's wrong.
I think what I'm trying to encourage them is that it's not necessarily about what everyone thinks about something. It's how you're going to do something, and you think about it your own way and what you want to do. And I encourage them to create.
Go, 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 go. Oh! 97, that was a new record. I encourage them to be themselves all the time and find the things that they're great at, and I encourage them to try new things so as that they can find those things that they're great at and feel confident in doing that. And I get emotional when I see them perform at their best.
It used to be seen that founders could be easily replaceable, that the founder's job was just to sort of boost the rocket, off the ground, and then the second stage and the third stage of that rocket journey was a professional CEO that came in to do that. Where people have come to realize that that vision and that entrepreneurial spirit and that spark is hard to replicate in someone else that is coming in to run the business. And so what we're finding now is COOs or chiefs of staff or other people supporting a founder in that journey. I think that's really important for that creative spark and that dissatisfaction with the world and the passion for what they're doing. Like, they made huge sacrifices to bring this new creation into the world, and the longer you can hold on to that, the better.
So in 2015, I got divorced, lost a lot of my personal identity. And in the office, I tried to isolate myself from the company too much because I was such a uranium, on the periodic scale when there's those elements down the bottom and they accidentally fire off protons and neutrons. They're pretty dangerous things to be around. That was me.
Fred was a little destructive, not turning up for meetings, not turning up to the office, trying to change the entire company, restructure things, at the drop of a hat.
As being that disruptive person, I would come in and go, let's do it better. Let's go and blow it up and start again. Like, let's go and make it 2 times better. That's not really a welcomed thing in a seasoned kind of company. And I actually exited the leadership meeting. Like, the whole leaders of the company, I didn't attend that meeting anymore. I remember one day I went to Frank and I said, I don't know what I do here anymore. I just had this image of me in this room, and there's no windows, no doors, and it's just me sitting there and like my head's looking down, there's this light. It's just enough for me to like just focus on one spot and that's it. And that's how I felt every day. Not creating something and not driving something forward, that basically took my energy away from me. That took my purpose.
Fred is like a brother I never had. It was hard for me to see him go through that period. It only became apparent later in life when I really understood how low, I guess, he went. He's a disruptor in himself, so I don't want to not encourage that disruption. In fact, that's the disruption is at the key of the success of the company. There was an opportunity in that period of time where we were looking at international expansion, and I saw that as an opportunity to say to Fred, how about you go and incubate and launch Finder in the States and give him a fresh project to work on and to apply all that energy into something that was new.
When I flew over there, I'd never really hung out in New York that much. It's a very intense place. And the idea was to start from scratch. We just had nothing.
Check this crazy door out. Yeah, we're out here.
FedEx.
This is where we've been rolling. This is the HQ. Dude, what's up? Like, there's a lot of different people like don't understand. Like, it's not about what you wear. It's about what you bring to the table. We're just hustling out here. It's like startup again. Like hashtag startup.
It was interesting to come from a country and build a business in a country where we were pretty much at the top, going to a place where no one's ever heard of us. We hardly even had a website, and we were a website company.
I remember we were sitting there and we're like, okay, let's put a page up about this credit card. We can see this credit card. Let's go and write about it. And I remember Jay was there. I was like, Jay, let's go and launch this. And he's like, yeah, okay. And we were like, wait a minute, how are we going to do that? Actually, how do we do that? Whoa. How do we do anything in this company? So we went all the way back down to like, how do you write an article? What is the brief you give? And we wrote these documents and started like blueprinting the company.
Where are you running to? We're running over the Manhattan Bridge and we got to go buy a whiteboard. So we're going to save on shipping by running over the bridge. It's a long way.
Where'd you buy the whiteboard?
Found on Craigslist.
How much was it?
$8.
We booked out an Airbnb in Pell Street in New York.
This is the office. I'll give you guys a little tour. This is where we do our work. This is our print station down here. We've got a couple of contracts coming out.
Moved all the furniture around. It was crazy. I think it was like Andy Warhol paintings on the wall. We were sticking like butcher's paper over the top. It was pretty gnarly.
Here's the whiteboard. It's installed. And we had our first post today. Winning.
I remember, trying to meet with a competitor's employee, expecting it would be an easy hire, and he shut us down. I was like, wow, okay, this is gonna change things. And we went back to the Airbnb and realized it's on us.
Startups are constantly having to reinvent themselves. Start in one region, you move to a new region, and you've got to start from the beginning all over again. You don't have any customers, you don't have the momentum. You're back at square one, you're back being scrappy.
What we thought was hustle and what we thought was the benchmark in Australia was nothing compared to the level you have to be at in America. We went to a university and they were doing a talk, and Fred and Jay put up job ads with, the little phone number on the end.
Snuck our way into a journalism college and making a job ad up on the fly with texter and pen. See what happens.
I remember there was a night through this whole experience and I started coming alive again.
It was quite an emotional time. It was intense. I remember at like 4 a.m. in the morning, we were just talking for hours straight, like just exhausted, just how raw and how difficult it's been to kind of succeed.
Yeah, so this is, I guess, an epiphany I had. And the thing about it is that it's taken a long time to sort of evolve that, and this really changed me and really affected me in a massive way. So I'll read you my story. I invented a comparison business and drove it into the ground until I started to hire great people. I've learned to inspire and find great people and bring great ideas to life all around the world. And that's my new story. That's who I think I am.
I realized who I am. I realized I start things.
So much industrialization.
That's why I was lost, because I was like, you can't start this company and the company is started. Whereas this company needs me and I know what to do and I can adapt and move. I didn't know that's the place for me. I thought when you're a CEO, you're supposed to be in the company and you're supposed to be in the leadership meeting, you're leading the company and you're like, that's not what I'm not good at that. Once it gets into a rhythm, it's best for me to step out. And then I need to go and find myself again. And probably the fastest way to go and do that is to probably go and create something again.
I think it's really interesting how there's atoms industrialization and then there's digital industrialization. I'm like a digital industrialist.
Founders are constantly evolving and changing with their business. Every now and again there's this really nice moment when they discover who they are and they work out why they've done this. There's this realization or acceptance that actually dealing with all this mess is the skill set. It's the thing that defines who they are and has made this business a success.
There's an overused saying that says change is the only constant. But if you join a startup, it's so true. Every day something is changing, breaking, evolving. It's totally different, from one week to the next, and you don't join it for stability and doing the same thing twice. If you're doing the same thing twice, you've made a mistake. It takes a certain type of person that wants that energy and that excitement that the startup gives you.
Final innings. There are two different types of games. One is a game where it's a fixed time period, like baseball. There are 9 innings and it ends.
Oh, such.
Or there are games where the game is actually to continue the game, to keep reinventing the game. That's how I see Finder. I sold my first business with Frank and we sold it. It was a great step, but I thought that was the game. And then I realized it doesn't end. And I was like, oh, the game's still going on. It's let's boot it up again.
Fred talks a lot about we're not a unicorn company, we're a phoenix. And that's very, very true of how we've built Finder, is that we constantly just reinvent ourselves. re-emerging to this new Finder.
You don't see like an end point of Finder. It's not like, oh, it's gonna finish here. It's a continuous, non-stop, endless shelf of growth and innovation and continuous. It's like gonna be a legacy. It'll be a company to live on forever. I think when you're working in a company that's going to be around forever, every morning, every day is day one. I think there are order of, purposes that people have. It's a stacking, and then at the top it probably is the one that actually gets you out of bed and actually gets you going. The one for me that's right at the top is I want to create something great. And something no one's ever done before. And it creates this place in history. And I seek that. But I just don't think I've hit that level where I've created something that people admire. Well, no, people do admire it. That's true. I don't admire it yet. But we're gonna make that. Like, I am not gonna stop until I do.